Yo, hopefully you're getting this and coming through. I'll be starting the stream shortly. We'll get this going in a few minutes here. Let's see if anybody wants to get in the chat. So yeah, we're going to be looking at Addictive Drums 2 in Bitwig. Night before last, I created a pretty cool Bitwig device to use with Addictive Drums 2 that solves quite a few problems. It's kind of an all-in-one device that does a lot of things that used to take me 4 or 5 different tasks in Cubase to achieve. So yeah, I'm quite excited about it. We'll be getting started here really quickly. Just give me a quick minute here. All right. I'm gonna get started because it's already quite late. Maybe some people get into the stream in a bit here. Didn't announce this one, and it's the first one I've done in a while because I had like really bad ear infections for over a month. Really, it was ongoing for. So I wanted to give my ears a bit of a break from working on music and mixing tunes for quite a while, really. But yeah, we're back to it. So yeah, the other night I was messing with Addictive Drums, and it was really bothering me that I didn't that Bitwig doesn't have like a drum map like you have in Cubase. You can create a drum map file that maps names to the to pitch on your MIDI editor or your drum editor, and it I couldn't figure out a way to do it in Bitwig. There's no way to load a drum map or anything. Like, there's an example here. I'll just delete out this preset that I've made, and instead we load Addictive Drums 2, standard in here. Okay, it takes a sec to load because I've got the full library. If we drew a MIDI block in here, let's close this, and we open that. This is the standard MIDI editor. This is the drum editor, but nothing is named by default. In Cubase, it's the same way, but like I said, you can create a drum map file, and then whatever instrument you have loaded in Cubase, you can just load that drum map, and you know, you only have to create it once. And it didn't seem to me at first that Bitwig really had a way to do that. So let's get rid of that, and instead of Addictive Drums, we'll load my preset back in again. And this, yeah, like I said, this solves a couple of different tasks. It'll be in favorites, yeah. So what this is basically, this is the Bitwig drum machine, and it's empty. There's no sampler on any of these channels. There's nothing. They're just blank. And all I did, if I go to a blank one here, down here, you can just add one here. And if you just hit OK without selecting anything, it'll add a blank drum pad, an active drum pad with nothing on it, but you can then name it. And the way, I think Ableton, if I recall right, works a similar way when it comes to drum maps. So now if we drew in a new MIDI block here and we go into it, you can see this follows all of the naming convention of everything that I've named in the Bitwig drum machine. Now the drum machine isn't doing anything except for passing MIDI through and being used as a container for modulators and some kind of pretty deep MIDI routing to or note routing to group all of the like drum hits together, like all of the snare articulations together, all of the hats together, all the toms together, all the flexies together. And some of them are kind of, it's not as easy as just grouping up a whole lot. There'll be one hit somewhere, tucked in somewhere, like that flexi, these flexies here. You got rides here, and then you got rides somewhere up here. And yeah, so it took a lot of, if we go into the device here, inside the chain, got Addictive Drums here, but in front of it is this thing I've called a note mapper. And this was basically just a note effects layer container, and then I've broken each of these down into groups of like instruments. So we've got the kicks. Now here I've got a note filter. The kick is on C1, so it's only letting through C1. The main kicks is only letting through velocity of 70 to 127. The ghost kicks is letting through everything lower than that, so everything from 0 to 69. And that means that I can single out lower velocity kicks that we're using as kind of ghost layers in like a little drum roll or something, or a turnaround. You can humanize those but leave your main kicks intact, and that was my reasoning there. And I did the same with the snares. So I've got main snares, and then I've got every single articulation. And I'll go over why I did that. There's another really cool little tool here. So let's get rid of this blank MIDI. We'll do a Blue Peter job. Here's one that I made earlier. And it's already quite funky, even though you can see everything is 100% quantized to 16th notes, I think. Yeah, to 16th notes, nothing smaller than that. And then, yeah, a little bit of velocity. But you'll see even the velocities that I've drawn in here, pretty vanilla. So I've got my main kick drums all at one static velocity, and then there's two little ghost kicks. There's one kind of in this double kick here, and then one in this little kind of turnaround here, with these ghost snares and toms. So again with the snares, I've got my main snare hits all hitting a set velocity, and in here even all of the ghost snares are all at the same velocity. And I wouldn't normally do that. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm trying to test the humanization, and if I humanized it already, it wouldn't really change much, or it might take it too far. So I've brought the ghost snares down to a reasonable velocity, I think about 30% or something, and then you can humanize them 5%, 10% either way, and you'll get some nice kind of variations, but it'll be ever changing as well. It'll sound a lot more live over time. You can record it and chop bits out of it, the nicest little bits that you get. You can combine it up here with the built-in shuffle if you want. Just add a little bit more groove. That can come in quite handy. So yeah, again, the snares, very, very vanilla with the velocity settings. Here's all the hats. Again, every single hat at one velocity. And again, I would never do that. This is just to test the humanization. Got rides here. Again, all one velocity. Alternating between two different ride articulations in a kind of random way. Not really in any following the same pattern. A little tom switch around here, and then up at the top, got some, again, not particularly humanized, but a little bit on a flexi, and I put them on flexi 3 because most of the time when you preset dive in, if you put them on flexi 1, there'll be something already on flexi 1 that might not be a conga or whatever, because this MIDI here is really written for a conga. So it's two different variations of the same conga. I think it's like an open hit and then a finger tap or a slap on the rim. But yeah, we'll get into that. I don't think the kit has a conga loaded right now. But I like to build MIDI files with a bit of everything, just so, especially when I was working on making this preset, because I had to build it all out into all of these different channels, and each one of these has its own humanizer. So the flexi one's a bit weird, so I had to put another note effects layer here because the hits are all over the place in the piano roll. So I had to group them all together first with 3 different note filters, and then there's one, I think each one has a humanizer, and then there's a humanizer to group all of those. Yeah, so it was a lot of work going through and basically setting all the routing up, setting all of the note filters to the right notes in the Addictive Drums. Let's have a look. Where are we? Oh, here it is. In the you can open up from Addictive Drums here, the Keymap, and it'll load a file, shows you how to name everything. And I did all this in Cubase once before as well. I just went through and named a drum map file according to all of this, and that's basically how I named all of the drum pads in the Bitwig drum machine, just according to this. And then what's really cool is the Bitwig drum machine then acts like a drum map if you save it as part of the preset. It's not actually really even doing anything other than storing modulators and remote controls for other things that are in the chain. So let's close up the note mapper. I've explained kind of what it's doing. It's just breaking everything out. Again, with the hi-hats here, each one has got every single articulation broken out. Each of these 5 articulation groups has its own humanizer, and then if we close this, all of the hi-hats have one group humanizer, and that's the only. I'm not going into super deep level here. I'm doing everything kind of in groups, but the option is there to go deeper if you want, to humanize one tom more than another or something. You can do that the way it's set up. I have uploaded this to Bitwiggers today. I uploaded it a couple of days ago, but there was something wrong with the mapping that I noticed when I was playing with it earlier, so I fixed that and added a few extra remote controls that could be useful. With the remote controls down here, this is just page 1, so let's get something playing. Close up the clip launcher there, and again, if we go to edit, we can see both the MIDI and our little chain down here. We'll close up the note mapper so we can see a bit more of what's going on over here. and I can show you what all of this does. I've got buttons here that, regardless of what snare you have here, because we've got lots of different snare articulations. These buttons will switch it to whichever one is named here, regardless of where you've drawn the MIDI. I've got all the routing set with note transpose devices in chains that will the note filter will detect what it's on, and if it's on that one, it will transpose it. So yeah, we could move these. It's on the open hit at the moment. If we move that down to the rim shot, it'll still play the open hit. But the ghost snares are now playing rim shots, I think. Yeah, because that's where they're set to by default. If we were to okay, so we wanted it on that shallow hit. If we move all those snares to any of these channels, it'll always trigger that shallow hit. And you can mix and match them. So we could say we want the shallow snare with the shallow rim, ghost. Got mutes for various things here as well, so we can mute the ride. Now these humanisers here are set to humanise almost everything. The only thing that they're not going to touch is the ride, the conga, because those are kind of going to be kind of a constant, setting a constant pace if we use them. The main kicks and the main snares are not going to be touched, and I don't think the cymbal. Everything else is humanised by velocity and offsets it from the grid. Now, each of these at 100% is 10. So each 1% is each 10% of this is 1 unit. So what we're doing with velocity is setting it to play random velocities between a range of plus minus 1%, 20 would be 2%, 50 would be 5%, and it goes up to 10%. So, on the ride, you might only want very subtle, 3% range, but on ghost snares, you might want 10%. But this is a kind of all-encompassing one, and then using this toggle, you've got kick and snare here, hats and cymbals, toms and flexi, to humanise each one more if you want to go further with it. The chants will affect everything but rides, congas, and the main kicks and snares. So you can really strip back the groove. Like say we went to something with like a side stick. Let's go back to Addictive Drums here. And well, let's just check a few different presets. The groove's already quite funky, and a lot of that comes from the fact that I'm making use of the different articulations, and especially if you make good use of the hi-hat pedal. The pedal will choke out every other hit, so it kind of gives it kind of almost a pump-in effect. I find it a lot more groovy using the pedal, alternating the pedal with the tip and the shaft hits here, and using the pedal to every time you use an open hit to choke it. You hear that? Like if I take that out, we'll move it back. That open hit lasts longer. I just like the sound of how these open, and normally I wouldn't have this on the grid. I'd have it quite offset, but that's what I made this for. And it's randomizing, so it's never going to be as good as doing it yourself. But it's just a tool for inspiration, or quickly getting things down as audio. And it's especially useful when preset diving, because again you can just switch these variations anytime you want, regardless of where your snares are. Here, put them back where they were. I tend to more often than not use that open snare. So yeah, you know, it's already quite funky without even. Oh, we are actually humanizing the velocity here. I didn't think there was anything happening. Okay, this is I think the purely vanilla groove. Everything fully quantized to the grid. Yeah, no humanizing anywhere going on. So yeah, already quite funky, but it's definitely got a bit of a robotic sound in the hats because they're all exactly the same velocity, and the ghost snares all sound a bit samey. We do have a lot of humanizing going on in Addictive Drums, though. I think each of the kit pieces has round robin type stuff going on, as long as this section is activated. Which, if I'm trying to emulate an old funk break at a slower tempo, I would probably leave on. If I was using this to make pitched up drum and bass drums, I would have everything. I'd have no alts on, so everything's kind of static. But trying to emulate a real drum performance, you know, you want it as kind of humanized as possible, really, without going too. You know, you can take it too far, definitely, but the timing humanization is only set to go to a maximum of 10 milliseconds, I think, offset. So you know, with things like ghost snares, you would often have those much more than 10 milliseconds off of the grid. Let's try a completely different kit. What's the jazz one sound like? Okay, let's start messing with the snare articulations and some humanization here. So this again is going to be a maximum of, I don't know if it's a full 10% range or plus minus 10%, but you can see it's almost pushing it too far, going maximum. So that's kind of why I set it to that point. And it's also easy to know that it's just 10% is what is 10% is 1%, basically. And then the humanize goes to a maximum of 10 milliseconds, and it's only humanizing ghost snares, hi-hats. It does humanize the rides. I think it humanizes the toms, and those two low kind of ghost kicks. It'll humanize those. Not the. Not sure if it's human. Yeah, I think it probably is humanizing the flexies as well. But you can hear just turning that up to, that would be about 7 milliseconds, which is quite common sort of setting for me to use as a pre-delay on a reverb. I could hear in my headphones anyway. It kind of felt like it sounded wider kind of and more gelled. And a bit more loose, which is what we're looking for. You know, around 30–40% is quite a nice area too. It's a bit more tight, but just human enough that it doesn't sound fully quantized. And then on each of these pages, we can set them all to go plus and minus in milliseconds. So some of them will be early, some of them will be late. Alright, let's get a different preset. Let's get back to that funk kit and get a conga in there. Look. Pretty funky maybe. And, oh, need that still open. Flexi 3, I'll just load a conga. Turn it down a little bit. And then with the chance is not going to affect the conga or the ride, whichever one that we've got engaged here, or we could turn. Just going to add a bit of randomness to the ghost snares and the hi-hats. But when you combine that with either the rides or the congas, it can sound really quite good. So yeah, it allows you to browse different snare articulations without having to have the MIDI open. So, you know, we could just be on the arrangement view, in this view basically, and not have to have, every time you want to check a different snare, you don't have to go into here. You've got these buttons for both high velocity snares and low velocity snares. And I set the cutoff for the snares at 80 velocity, so everything from 80 to 127 is classed as a main snare. Anything that's 0 to 79 is a ghost. So that's after humanisation. Even if we let every single hit play, it'll probably sound more messy if we do. The more I humanise it, the more I tend to dial back the chance a little bit and just let it kind of miss out a few ghost snares or hi-hats. Especially with a busy hi-hat arrangement like this, if you've got a ride going as well, you're probably going to want to lose a few of those hi-hats. That's why I don't have it affecting the ride, but it does strip back the hi-hat. And another cool thing about it is sometimes it'll skip 1, 2, 3 hits after one of these open hats here. It might skip these and let that open hat flush out, and occasionally you'll just get one, you know, in your groove that you didn't even draw in. And yeah, you'll notice it if I pull back this chance a fair bit. Of course, on that cycle it just skips every single open hat. There's one. There's an example where it just let it decay rather than choking it with a pedal. Another one. But yeah, we could try combining it with the built-in. And one of the reasons I did this is because one of Bitwig's kind of weaknesses really is it doesn't have any kind of groove template feature that I know of, like most other DAWs have had for a long time. But you don't really need one as long as you're fairly proficient with programming MIDI. I mean, this groove took me literally no time to come up with at all, and even without any of that humanisation, it doesn't sound half bad. It's it's got some funk to it, and you can let the whole busy arrangement with both the rides and the congas play with a lot of these presets, and it won't sound too sloppy really. It'll work. So as a starting point, it's already quite funky. And a lot of that just comes from the fact that you've got all these different articulations in Addictive Drums. Each of these toms has 2 different hits. You've got an open hit and a rim hit. So I think this goes from an open to a rim to open, I think. Be on there. 2 opens to a rim. Yeah. Let's browse a few other kits here. But yeah, I was only really going to do a quick stream talking about this thing and kind of what it's useful for. Obviously, one of the big ones for me is just having everything named. Every time I start from scratch with a MIDI file, I know what everything is. I don't have to be clicking keys up and down here trying to figure out where the hi-hats are, because it's all right here. And that was one of the things from Cubase that I was really missing in Bitwig. I figured it had to be there, and it is. It's just handled differently. You just have to throw a blank drum machine in, activate all the pads that you want to map, and name them, and that's it. And the cool thing about it is this does act as a container, so then you can nest whatever effects you want behind it. So I've got the note mapper doing all of the hard work basically for the humanizing stuff and the pitching for this stuff, and then just Addictive Drums behind it. And this analysis tools is just another one of my chains that just has a tool and a couple of analyzers. That's not a part of it. But yeah, it's on Bitwiggers. So I just put this version up today. And again, you've got kicks here, velocity, and it'll only do the 2 kicks that are low velocity. It won't touch your main kicks. Anything over 70. Like we could go really far with the ghost snares there. If we go back and mute the rides. So you do have more granular control here, each drum kit type together. But again, if you really want to, you can go way deeper in that, where is it, in the note mapper. Each individual articulation has its own humaniser in there as well. I just haven't mapped any of that. I doubt I would ever really use it too much. So, but this is just awesome. All I have to do, you know, in Cubase to get to do this kind of stuff, I would have had to load Addictive Drums, load a drum map, then activate that drum map in the drum editor, draw my groove. You know, obviously we skipped that part, and then to humanize it, if it was all on the grid, I would have to use probably 3, 4 or 5 logical editor presets. So I've got one that will humanize velocities on hi-hats that only touch every second hi-hat, things like that. And but you can get quite a bit more control that way. But you know, you could use the note grid to do similar stuff. Here, this is still quite basic. It's not touching the note grid at all. It's all just done with note effects layers and note filters, basically, that filter different notes to different groups or different chains. But yeah, that's it. Let's try a couple of different kits with it and maybe try accentuating this groove. Oops. Alright, let's move to a different drum kit. Let's try some side sticks. That's funny, this one must have a clap on Flexi 3. Yeah. So yeah, that's it, guys. Just a quick one, but yeah, it's kind of just demonstrating the modular capability, really, of Bitwig. It's just awesome. To do that kind of humanization on MIDI in Cubase would take about 5 or 6 separate tasks, even using complex logical editor presets that probably take you a good half an hour to make to do a lot of it. I know I've spent a lot of time making some MIDI logical editor presets in Cubase. This, you just have the device, it has the drum map built in, it has humanisation built in. You can switch drum articulations without going into the MIDI. It's, yeah, you literally don't have to go into the MIDI at all to move MIDI data around for any reason. It's great. So with this device, you know, if you only had this if you're working on kind of live stuff and you were playing from the clip launcher where you don't necessarily have your MIDI data up on the screen, you've got control of all of this stuff down here. So right there I could say I want the snares to get by default an extra 6.5% of timing humanisation. I say I only want the snares to play late. If you have any of these buttons engaged that set the direction early or late on the humanisation, it will automatically add some latency to compensate for it. So you'll notice if I play it and I turn all these off, it will kind of skip the timing. Right there. And that's because if I turn one on, you'll hear a delay, and that's because it has to add lag in order to, it's almost like look ahead. It has to see ahead by however many milliseconds so it can make the hits early. Hear it delay a little bit there. And that'll probably be the maximum depth of the modulation, which is 10 milliseconds. Anyway, just going to call it a night there. Just want to do a quick one, show you this preset. I will, once this video goes live on my channel, I'll put a link to the Bitwiggers link for this. It does have Addictive Drums 2 loaded into it, so you will need Addictive Drums 2. But really all that you would need to do anyway is just drag it in. But the problem there is now I've dragged it out, you'll see that I've lost my mids and my volumes, because as soon as I drag that out of the nesting, you lose that connection. So if I load that preset back again, you'll see I'll have those controls back. That's to load Addictive Drums first. Here we go. So yeah, if you drag Addictive Drums out of the nesting, you'll lose that connection there. And none of this will actually affect it either. None of the humanising will be affecting it if this isn't nested right but in the same chain as this. So yeah, that's it. I'll try and do a longer live stream on some music again, either later this week or over the weekend. Won't be tomorrow because it's me and my wife's anniversary tomorrow, so I will be going out and celebrating that. So at least have some dinner. Anyway, I will see you next time, guys. Peace.